My name is Ralph Galen. I'm a local activist living in Lawrence. Welcome to 30 Minutes, Lawrence, where through appreciative inquiry, we hope to empower people on their journey for truth and justice. Today, it is my great pleasure to meet a man who's been a hero of mine ever since I became involved in the ending mass incarceration movement and criminal justice reform. This is Bobby Dellelo, who has been a volunteer in the criminal justice program at the American Friends Service Committee ever since 2003, starting 3 days after you were released from a consecutive 40-year sentence in the state prison system. And in addition, we're going to talk about youth incarceration. But so this is a two-part program. Our first part, we want to get to know you, Bobby, and what motivates you, what makes you click. And in the second part of the program, we'll be talking about some of the brass tacks about how to reform a system that you regard as broken and damaging. So how did you grow up, Bobby? Where'd you grow up?
I grew up in the West End of Boston before they tore it down and put up all those high-rises. And from there I lived in Dorchester and Roxbury, and that's the area where I was brought up. I was involved in a lot of breaking and entrance with the neighborhood kids. That's what we did. And shoplifting in Upham's Corner. And then from there I graduated into the prison system, went to reform school. And then after getting, I think I told you before, is in the reform school, I learned how to steal a car before I knew how to drive one. I learned how to take the antenna off a car and make a zip gun that would fire a .22 long bullet. This is what this system did. It either made you hardcore, took your heart out, or it broke you. That was the nature of that place. From there, I went into the state prison system. And in the state prison system, I learned how to pick locks, how to crack safes, how to circumvent burglar alarms. When they say the school of hard knocks, they're not kidding. And I came into Walpole prison probably near the end of the old school. And when I first got into Walpole, there were maybe 10 hardcore drug addicts. And nobody trusted a drug addict because the cops get you in a cell, they leave you there for 8 hours, then come in with a bag of dope and say, hey, you help us, we help you. This guy's gonna give his mother up. So the old school people stopped teaching their trade. And there were guys that were awesome people. Louis the Lug, this guy he was famous. He backed up to the canteen, which was like maybe 10 feet away from the control room, and he picked the locks backwards, walked away, other guys went in and got the stuff. He was down in Norfolk prison. They couldn't open one of their safes. They asked him if he would open the safe for them. And he said, okay, he said, but I don't want nobody there because I don't want you to see my technique. He said, no problem. He opened it so fast, he got bored and he opened up the second safe. They locked him up for opening the second safe. He was only supposed to open this one.
No good deed goes unpunished, Bobby.
But I mean, this guy considered this an art form. And he would teach it if you were worthy of being taught. But if he was a junkie, he doesn't want anything to do with you.
Let's go back a little bit to what led you to get into trouble in the first place.
Well, the neighborhood that I was brought up in, particularly in Roxbury, all right, the kids that I was running with were getting in trouble, all right. My brother went more into sports. all right? And I went in the other direction because I had asthma and stuff and couldn't do the sports thing. And that's what, breaking into little places with guys. And I was small. I mean, I was really a tiny guy. And a little window, okay, give you an example, a chicken coop. The hole on the door for the chickens, I could go through that. I could work my way out there. So the older guys used to put me through these windows, the transits and stuff. I'd get inside and open the door for them.
There you go.
So that became a normal life for me. That was like normal. And I didn't see the damage that I was creating until I got into the prison system and got involved in the educational program. My world was this big. And once I started doing the college courses, my world vision expanded. And then I could now look back critically at my life and what I was doing and where I was going. And I decided to make change in myself. Education is a valid rehabilitation tool, not for everybody. Some people, one of the things I argued about was that if you took the lifers and long-termers, you're not going to be able to do it with all of them, but you can get a bunch of them, that you train them, get them certified masonry, electrical, plumbing, the whole bit, and educational, and have these lifers train the prisoners. Gives meaning and purpose. What happens in a prison system is they just put you in there and say, get along well. And you sit there and after a while they say, yeah, I can deal with that. And they go to the drugs. And it becomes a big business. God usually is saying that, the drugs come in through the visits. Yeah, maybe some drugs come in through the visit. But the quantity of drugs comes from the gods. I dealt drugs in the prison. It was a survival. I mean, you didn't make money. There was no, what they give you, $1 a day, 25 cents a day. You can't buy stuff in a canteen with that. So you're kind of forced into that field. And as a consequence, I saw, gods would come to me and ask that they could lug for me, because that's how they make money. And like if you come Christmas time, this was the best time to get a god and say, listen, bring me in the Marlboro box. Don't open it. I'll give you $2,500. This is Christmas time. That's not good enough? I'll give you $5,000. How many gods you think would say no to that? I didn't find any that said no. And that's how I survived in the prison. That's how my friends survived in the prison, is we had to live off of negative behavior. That was the only way to survive. And this is what prisons do to human beings, is it puts them in an abnormal environment. And to survive in an abnormal environment, you have to become abnormal.
Did you see a change in the prison population from, 63 to 2000?
Let me explain this, because people don't get it. You got to treat everybody the same way, but everybody isn't the same. When I first went in to Walpole Prison, there was an old school that taught guys that they considered worthy of teaching, all right? That crew is gone. What's in the prison system now is basically drug addicts. And they're selling drugs on the street for their support their habit. And you're putting them in jail. You tell them, you got to rehabilitate yourself, blah, blah. And at the same time, you're putting drug dealers in the same jail with drug addicts. And then you wonder why there's a drug problem. The system is so corrupt, all right? And I used to be a reformist, and you can't reform the system. It is so broken, all right? The best you can do is abolish it. And you're not going to do that instantly. You do it through attrition. Stop hiring guards. When a guy retires, don't fill the slot. we had a law put in called 777, which created the furlough program and all that. Around that time, recidivism dropped by 25%.
Through the furloughs?
Right. The guards sabotaged that because they saw job security go out the window. 25% drop in recidivism rate. Instead of, yay, we're doing great, they went the other direction. They sabotage it. How do they do it? They give guys furloughs that you know, this guy's not coming back. They blew the program.
Well, you had Willie Horton.
That was one of the key ones, right? And Joe the Polak. I mean, this guy kept killing people, and he leaves the prison system with $17,000, and you think he's coming back. I'm going to give presents to this guy. That he got out that door, took his $17,000, and was gone. But this is what's wrong with the system. You cannot make it work. And the way the security, right? The head of security creates the perfect security program, right?
In an individual prison?
Yeah. So he creates this perfect program. He leaves, the next guy that comes in has to change that. Or he doesn't need the job. So here we have the perfect security system, and then this other guy comes in and changes it. It's like having a car engine and throwing dirt into the motor.
And you spent 40 years straight on, mostly in Walpole, and you spent a lot of time in solitary.
Yes.
How much time did you spend?
Oh, God. The last time I spent was the Supermax DDU, Department Disciplinary Unit. I did 5 years and 1 month. All right. Prior to that, I had done a lot of time in solitary, but it was never like the DDU. Trying to figure out how to explain this without confusing you. 10 block was the lockup block, and had open front cells, and guys could talk and deal and do chess and whatnot. Everybody had a little chessboard, and it didn't do that much damage to you. DDU was different. The cell is 12 feet long, 8 feet wide, 10 feet high. You can literally do a spinning crescent kick in this cell. Guys told me that there's no law library, better get the law stuff that you need and bring it with you. When I got over there, they said after 30 days, they'll give me a radio. They'll provide the batteries, and after 60 days, they'll give me a 12-inch black and white television. And the thing I said to myself is, oh, this is going to be a piece of cake. All right? 3 months to 4 months, I had a lawyer come up to see me. I had the escape cases and other stuff, legal stuff. And I was in a room that was twice as big as this. And one side was all glass panels. And there was a desk in the middle. And she reached for a piece of paper. I followed the hand movement. When I come back to her, I lost the content of the conversation. The guard moved outside the thing. I looked at him. When I came back to her, I lost the conversation. And I thought I was losing my mind. And I couldn't say, what did they put in my, I knew drugs, and I knew no drug that did something like this. I couldn't get out of that room fast enough. When I got back to my cell, I was okay, all right? And I said, what the hell just happened to me? I had a list of stuff to talk to this lawyer about. I didn't get to talk about one thing. I just had to get out of that room. And I figured out what it was. Body language and verbal skills, you do simultaneously, all right? If for some reason that separates, you have chaos in the brain. Things don't make sense to you. So I wrote a piece and sent it to American Friends. They got it in 3 different magazines, Spare Change and a couple of other ones, and sent them into the prison and sent them into DDU. When I went out into the yard, they had these kennels, like dog kennels. And a black prisoner was next to me, and he literally was in tears. And he said, Bobby, I read that. That's exactly what happened to me. He was in the visiting room. Visiting room is a glass cage that you're in the metal stool and stuff. And he's talking to his wife, and the kids are playing over there. As he's talking to her, he looks at the kids, comes back to her, boom, lost the conversation. And when he read the article that I wrote, then he understood. And after I did that, guys would stand in between fences with their hands down here, and they used to just talk that way. So I started telling guys, I said, listen, you got to become Italian. You got to talk with your hands. And this is what it does to you. My TV, the in-between station stuff, talk to me. My ventilator, which has like a kill yourself, kill yourself, kill yourself. What the hell is that? I literally took my television and stuck it underneath the counter and didn't pick it up no more. Just said, I'm done with that.
Well, how did you keep yourself together in
I
solitary?
did. Well, did
you write?
Okay, here's a funny thing. It's ironic, right? Court TV came in there. Department of Correction brought him in for propaganda stuff. And one of the IP lieutenants was standing in the block. There's like a neon light speaker, right? And he was up against the wall, and it opened my slot, the food slot. And I was looking out, and he was saying, he was like doing like this. He said, talk to him. And I was looking at him and said, so the guy come over to me, he said, would you mind talking to me? I said, no, not at all, right? And that was the link. I had fantasized in the madness of cutting guards' heads off and rolling them down the corridor. I mean, that's the kind of insanity, the hate and the anger is so built up in your gut. This guy, when he did that, right, he destroyed that image. I couldn't cut his head off and roll it down the corridor.
Because he became a human being to you?
Exactly, and he was risking his job. I mean, you had to see he's up against the wall, and he couldn't speak because of the speaker, right? And he just mouthed it. Talk to him. And when I'd say stuff to this guy, explain the conditions of the confinement, what was happening to prisoners in there, what was happening to their minds, he would turn and look to him, and he would say, yeah, and then after that experience, there were other guards in there that I couldn't hurt that guy. You know what I mean? There was one big fat guy. Every time you left your cell, they would go in and turn the cell upside down. You'd have footprints on your thing. When the food comes in, it's in a container, and a bunch of them go into a big microwave. When it comes out, they take the cover off, it's all wet. The salt, sugar, and pepper are soaking wet. You can't use it. You have to put it up on the shelf, and the next day you take the wet stuff, you put it up there, you take the dry stuff, you put it on your food. It's contraband. They come in your cell, they take it. I have a stack of legal material like this. They take this much, flick it, put it down, take more, boom. You see what I'm doing? It's like a deck of cards. They're mixing all my legal material up. It's going to take me weeks to unravel this. The hate, the anger that builds up inside you, all right, really affects your mind. The hate. This one big guy, and I learned martial arts and really was quite dangerous with the art forms. If the door ever opened between him and me, I would have done everything within my physical ability to kill this bastard. I hated him so much. He'd come in my cell, like I said, put footprints on my sheets and stuff, flip the mattress over, mix all my stuff up. It wasn't necessary, and the hate overwhelmed me and took control of my mind. This guard, the IP lieutenant, when he did what he did, that grounded me.
What's amazing about that, Bobby, is that was not an extensive contact with him.
Well,
That was
no,
a very,
I talked to him.
Initially, that was very, very brief, but that was responsible for
Well, see what happened.
turning you around.
Okay, but see, prior to that, him and I used to talk about corrections. So we had a relationship,
Okay.
right? So when he told the guy, talk to him, he knew what I was going to say. And when the guy kept looking back to him like, is this right? He'd say, yeah.
Well, as Janet Connors would say, I think you know Janet Connors, big in restorative justice, and her son was killed in their home. I forget when it was, 2000, around there, and she's become very big in. She tried to be in touch with the killers of her son, and succeeded to some extent, and now works in diversion, and is just wonderful with restorative justice, and goes down to Norfolk regularly. She calls prison legalized revenge. So here's a system where you are being dehumanized, and in turn, you are regarding other human beings as less than human, as animals. You're being treated as an animal, regarded as an animal.
Well, understand this, most of my friends were killers.
You bought that. Mm-hmm. What I'm saying is it sounds, the word, how I'd look at it is, you, the part of your humanity was close to being destroyed.
It was destroyed.
Well, I would
and
say,
I came back.
I would say almost completely, because obviously there was some ability to connect, and pathway of compassion still had
Well, I
been
wonder
crushed out.
if this lieutenant
And
didn't do that, where would my head have been? It would have stayed in the insanity.
Exactly.
He grounded me.
The reason I'm underlining that is that that was not an extensive program. That was not a costly $1 million program. That was human contact. That was somebody treating you as a human being, and then
I
you
reacted as one.
could not refuse to recognize him as a human being. And that, in that moment of courage and connection, is when there was a turnaround. Up to that point, had you been writing about prison rights?
I wrote some stuff in there. It was really difficult because I was trying to do law at the same time. An interesting thing happened to me. Smoking, of all the drugs, I settled for marijuana. I enjoy smoking marijuana, kicking back with a headphone and listening to music or whatever. 4 years after I got into DDU, I mean, I knew my short-term memory was screwed up. Like, I could read a paragraph to you out of the law book, put it down, and you ask me what I just read, I couldn't tell you. All right. I had 5 or 6 cases on my bed, and I knew where everything was located. My short-term memory came back, and it was like a profound shock, like, wow, now I knew what I lost. Choice, marijuana, short-term memory. Marijuana loses. I need my short-term memory. And that was one of the good things from DDU, is it kept me away from drugs for my short-term memory to come back. I kind of knew that, it had some problems, but when it totally came back to me, then I recognized what I lost.
So I just want to put a cap on this, because we, believe it or not, we only have a couple of minutes left. We're going to pick up in part 2 what people can do, what we all can do to change this system, which, to put a cap on it, I would say, was built to dehumanize you, to oppress you, and it had very little to do with corrections. This is aside from the fact that the road to recovery also included taking responsibility for your life, and then taking responsibility for recovery after that. So you were in prison, by the way, when Attica happened.
Yes.
Okay. Did that have an effect on you? Was that
Yes.
a changer?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Because we're still learning about Attica right now, but it was
Well, it came very close to losing Walpole the same way Attica went down.
right. And should say that you're co-author of a book called When
The prisoners ran Walpole.
the Prisoners Ran Walpole, and for 12 weeks actually did something, well, it took over the prison.
Well, they surrendered it, and we accepted it.
Well, that's not a daily occurrence, is it? So listen, Bobby, I want to thank you for sharing your experiences in prison. We just began to touch on the effects that imprisonment had in your life. And we're going to pick up in part 2 on reentry and how people recover from long and short stays in prison, and the responsibility that society has to manage. So, just want to say thank you for tuning in. We want to thank Bobby Dellelo. He's a volunteer now and has been for 14 years with the American Friends Service Department and the Criminal Justice Program. Can be considered a reformist.
No, an abolitionist.
And more so an abolitionist, and we'll discuss what it means to be an abolitionist in the second part. Thanks for tuning in to 30 Minutes Lawrence.
Oh, that was neat.
Yep.
Smartphone.
Not that smart, wouldn't turn off.
No, I go through the same thing.